Chapter 1836, each displays their own supernatural powers. On the battlefield, which is full of gunfire, human soldiers are roaring, as if they know that they will die today, so they charge for the last time in their lives. The army made of flesh and blood is like ants, hidden under the long-range bombardment of various new weapons, charging towards the battlefield. And in front of them, waiting is hundreds of thousands of mechanical life forms. They had also been waiting for this battle, or rather, the orders they had received had only been fully activated up to this moment. One after the other, the missiles dragged blazing flames as they cut a perfect yet cruel arc through the sky, descending mercilessly upon the land. Under the influence of the reaction force field, the defense force field of the mechanical life forms was greatly weakened. The formation of huge equipment and facilities that spread out in a fan-shaped manner was like hundreds of huge loudspeakers, emitting an invisible energy force field. The mechanical life forms waited for the merciless bombing. One after another, they were destroyed, but they still formed walls without fear, sealing Chernobyl firmly in. From the command center, the situation on the battlefield was relayed in real time to Jangi and the others. They could clearly see that in the face of human attacks, the mechanical life forms did not choose to attack actively. Instead, they quickly gathered together to form one huge wall after another, keeping them firmly at bay. They are buying time, and must be carrying out some very important action. Jangi frowned and said. Then break through their military formation. Whatever they are trying to do, we must not let them succeed. Aliyev was in the command center, slamming his hand down on the table. Give me full firepower. The war engulfed the entire land. Even mutants of the Epsilon level had to retreat in the face of those terrifying energy fluctuations. Human soldiers charged into battle, using their flesh and blood to blaze a bloody path. The various modern and new weapons could pose a considerable threat to those metal hulks. However, the real killer weapon is still the mutant with great power or armed with modern weapons. The Krufa unit, Fremon's first-class mutant beast army, turned into a sharp blade and charged directly at the formation of the Mechanical Legion. Jangi and Morana were still waiting. As agreed, they would attack after the carpet bombing. Fremon's artillery corps and missile troops were responsible for the first attack, but the key point still lay with them. Next to Jangi, Brian the white dog suddenly sniffed and his expression became serious. I smell danger. Jangi and the others all looked at it, as a dog's nose was always more sensitive than a human's. What did you find? King Arthur asked. Brian narrowed his eyes and looked at the center of Chernobyl. There, something powerful and terrifying is about to appear. Jangi crossed his arms and looked at Brian to make sure. If you want to play the terrier, please do it some other time. This is no joking matter. So, are you serious? No wonder Jangi was thinking so much. It was really because this dog was so nonsensical. Its Columbia-style humor often left Jangi speechless. Hearing his words questioned, Brian immediately patted his chest with his paw in anger. Oh, damn it. You dare to doubt Brian Griffin's judgment? This is an unforgivable crime. I guarantee that there is definitely some kind of ulterior motive hidden there. And, his expression had never been more serious. I feel that we must solve this problem as soon as possible. Dogs have very keen instincts. Even if Brian didn't say it, everyone knew that something very dangerous was there. But his words made everyone hasten the pace of the attack. The bombing in the sky continued, but some people could no longer sit still. Don't waste any more time. Emperor Indra stepped on the ground barefoot, the only one among everyone to act unconventionally. Even though many mutants of the Epsilon level have strong physiques and can withstand the extreme cold of -100 degrees Celsius, he is the only one who insists on going shirtless and barefoot. If this were Jangi, he would never do such a thing. Even if only a portion of the heat is used to resist the cold, he would not tolerate it. Emperor Indra looked at the leaders of the world's leading powers present and said, "Shall we go?" Indeed, we cannot waste any more time. This battle had better be over quickly. The one who responded to him was none other than Saladin, the Emperor of the Kutan Empire. He was covered in a dignified black robe, and unlike the others, he did not have any subordinates with him. Jangi guessed that he probably had a space ability similar to Muyan's, which allowed him to carry people on his body. Otherwise, no one would be stupid enough to come to such a dangerous battlefield alone. Everyone, Saladin slowly walked forward and stood at the front of the crowd. "Let me open a path for you." As soon as Saladin's words fell, the sky suddenly became overcast. Thick clouds gathered above the mechanical legion, and the clouds became heavier and heavier, as dark as a large black curtain covering the sky. Saladin's tall, thin figure stood before the crowd. The wind picked up, rising from his body and agitating his luxurious black robe. He opened his arms and looked up at the sky, like a huge black hawk. The next moment, he spoke slowly, murmuring something. A thick black smoke surged from within his body and then shot up into the sky. Saladin's body slowly dissipated, and with the black smoke, it flew into the sky and merged into the enormous black cloud. Everyone watched the scene with bated breath. The abilities of the White Bishop-level mutant gave a thrilling feeling when they were used to their full potential in battle. A moment later, Jangi saw the huge black cloud in the sky change. The black cloud turned into a huge face, the face of Saladin. That face looked down on all things on the earth below, and suddenly opened its mouth wide, as if the sky had split open in a crack. The split in the black cloud was dazzling white, and it emitted a heart-pounding energy fluctuation. Within the black clouds, terrifying thunder condensed, and that white thunder appeared in Saladin's mouth. Roar. Jangi and the others heard a long, deep roar that was so loud it spread across the battlefield. It was the sound of thunder and wind howling in the sky. Saladin's cloud illusion's mouth grew larger and larger, and the white lightning in his mouth grew more and more intense, illuminating the entire battlefield below. Boom! Suddenly, a huge pillar of silver lightning shot out of Saladin's mouth, slashing like a silver sword at the front line of the mechanical legion. Thundercloud storm. The silver lightning was charged with madness, mercilessly exploding on the ground. The light was so dazzling that the lightning engulfed a large number of mechanical life forms, directly causing their bodies to explode. How clever! Seeing this magnificent scene, Newton could not help but raise his glasses and exclaim in admiration. The essence of mechanical life forms is that they are machines, so attacking them with lightning is most appropriate. Even if they cannot be directly destroyed, they can be made to malfunction. Not bad for Saladin. After a long time, the thundercloud storm gradually dissipated, and thousands of mechanical life forms on the ground were in a state of downtime. Electricity was surging through their bodies, and it was clear that they could not continue fighting for a short time. A crack appeared in the sturdy defensive line, and the morale of the human soldiers rose high. They roared and charged through the gap. King Arthur wore a smile on his face as he drew his magnificent knight longsword, inlaid with red and blue sapphires. "It's time for us to go." He leapt forward, taking the lead into the battlefield, followed closely by the magician Merlin and the 12 members of the Knights of the Round Table. There was no time to hold back, and everyone knew that this battle must completely resolve the trouble with mechanical civilization, so they all charged straight into the battlefield. "Hey, this is Fremon's territory." King Arthur suddenly heard a cold voice in his ear. He glanced aside and saw a huge glacier rapidly approaching from afar, heading straight for the battlefield. Morana, the Pantheon's winter goddess, stood on a spreading glacier, alone and proud, charging towards the battle formation. She was a step ahead of King Arthur, and arrived directly in the center of the mechanical legion, before pressing her right hand directly into the ground. "Freeze the eternal domain." A word came cold and hard from her lips. The next instant, with her palm as the center, a huge glacier spread in all directions. On the frozen earth, in the frozen world, extreme cold filled every corner. This cold instantly froze the surrounding mechanical life forms. "Spread the cold to every mechanical life form," Morana said. One after another, powerful people joined the battlefield, and the mechanical life forms responded. Among the combat robots, there are elites more than 10 meters tall, and there are also super-large mechanical life forms hundreds of meters tall, as huge as buildings. They are all the fighting forces of the Mechanical Legion, and when faced with the surprise attack of the human strongmen, they also appeared like small mountains. However, their choice was not to charge up and collide, but to form a huge wall to block the path of the human coalition's attack. A war tank-like super-large mechanical life form gathered enough energy and then spewed out a red laser cannon, shooting it at King Arthur in the distance. King Arthur didn't care at all about this, and the scabbard of his sword in his left hand directly blocked in front of him, completely isolating this power from the outside. At this time, what was Jangi doing? He didn't choose to go directly to the battlefield, but only told the Heavenly God Squad and the Volt Shadow Troop to appear and enter the battlefield to gain experience. He himself was tens of kilometers behind everyone else, using divine refinement to erect a huge sniper rifle. How big was it? It was about 10 times bigger than Jangi himself. The reason for needing a large sniper rifle was simply because the bullets for the Yuan energy cannon were large, and a longer, thicker barrel was needed to dissipate the heat. The city defense sniper, which had been transformed using divine refinement, was even more powerful than it had been during the defense of Tianhai City. Jangi stood behind the big sniper, using the equipment of the intelligence system and the satellite equipment provided by Fremons to aim. In fact, aiming was just to avoid accidentally injuring friendly forces. Because those super-large mechanical life forms were like small mountains, they were very obvious targets when viewed from a high place. Jangi loaded the city defense sniper with bullets, powered by the purest metamatter, and the bullets were made partially from E-metal. This was the most powerful sniper rifle and armor-piercing bullet in the world today. While the other mutants were still struggling to tear open the front line, Jangi locked onto a super-large mechanical life form and pulled the trigger. King Arthur and the others were still fighting on the front line. To quickly destroy the entire Mechanical Legion, they had to deal with the 100,000 mechanical life forms in the front battlefield. Although they were all mass-produced machines and were, in the broad sense of the word, cannon fodder, they were actually not easy to clean up. Just then, there was a deafening noise behind them. A black ray of light then pierced the battlefield and shot precisely at the body of a super-large mechanical life form. The super-large mechanical life form reacted very quickly, and its circular shield-shaped defensive force field was activated instantly. However, it shattered the moment it came into contact with the black ray of light. Boom! A huge bullet of unbreakable strength, perhaps a cannonball would be a more appropriate description, shot straight into the incredibly tough body of the giant mechanical life form and exploded. A strong black smoke drifted out from its body, and the small mountain-like body froze for a moment before collapsing to the ground. King Arthur, Emperor Indra, and the others saw this, and a flash of surprise passed through their eyes before they subconsciously looked back in the direction Jangi was standing. Jangi was standing on a vantage point and was slowly and methodically reloading his second bullet. That guy, is that strong? King Arthur couldn't believe it. He could destroy the super-large mechanical life form, but it was not easy to do so easily. Emperor Indra's face changed, but he didn't say anything, and gritted his teeth as he continued to vent his anger on the mechanical life forms. No one here probably knew better than anyone else just how strong Jangi was. Even though he had anticipated every move, he still lost 6 consecutive times against Jangi. This was something that was completely unthinkable in the past. There was one fact that he was unwilling to admit. The fact that he could lose in such a situation only meant that an absolute gap in strength had formed between him and Jangi. Among the crowd, there was one person who didn't seem too surprised to see Jangi's astonishing result. That person was Gao Changkong. He looked at the super-large mechanical life form that was slowly collapsing, and just gave a faint smile. This guy, just the same as always. Jangi has always been an expert with guns. As a top-level ability user of both time and space, his sniping methods are unparalleled in the world. Therefore, most of the time, Jangi, who appears in the front line of battle, is not the most terrifying. The Jangi who assassinates is the most terrifying. With the entry of a large number of mutant teams, the advantages of the human side began to become apparent. This was no longer the early stages of the war, and they had all learned how to deal with the mechanical life forms, so the battle damage ratio had also been greatly reduced. Even the most difficult to deal with super-large mechanical life forms had a means of dealing with them. It was almost a coalition of the world's most powerful forces, and it was just the kind of strength that should be displayed. At this time, in a space node deep within Chernobyl, the ritual of the Sovereign of Six Wings was still underway. The black light in his hands formed an incredibly complex string of characters, dancing wildly in the palm of his hand, as if to completely open up this space node. Jangi's city defense snipers in his hands continued to fire non-stop. Fighting against mechanical civilization had benefited him greatly so far. In particular, Liu Karen's mechanical technology had also been greatly improved. For example, the divine refinement in his hands now incorporates the cutting-edge technology of the mechanical civilization's demon god machines. That is why he can easily destroy one demon god machine after another. At this moment, Jangi even has a feeling. Although purely in terms of the amount of supernatural power in his body and the characteristics of his supernatural ability of the attributes of time and space, his ability index is judged to be around 30,000 points. But once he completely masters the technological means of the demon god body and integrates them into his own arsenal, he will be able to touch even a powerful being with 40,000 points. Science is the primary productive force, and this saying will never become outdated, even in the end times. No wonder mechanical civilization has taken such a path. Boom! Another super-large mechanical life form fell under Zhang Yi's sniper fire. Although they had taken precautions, Zhang Yi was using the technology of a superior demon god. Even the defensive force field of the superior demon god had been thoroughly researched by Liu Karen, let alone these mechanical life forms. After the first battle, more than half of the oversized mechanical life forms on the battlefield were destroyed by Zhang Yi. This made Emperor Indra grind his teeth. Although at this time, as a member of the Allied forces, he hoped to quickly break the enemy's formation. However, according to the agreement, they would each collect their own spoils of war. In other words, those extremely precious oversized mechanical life forms would all fall into Zhang Yi's pocket. Emperor Indra's eyes were slightly red. However, his abilities were indeed limited when faced with inorganic objects that did not respond to living things. So after fighting for so long, they had only managed to solve one. Not only Emperor Indra, but everyone else also felt a strange sensation in their hearts. But thinking about what these mechanical life forms were trying their best to protect must be of even greater value, they temporarily suppressed the jealousy in their hearts. Terrorist battles broke out all over the battlefield. Deng Shintong, Fatty Su, and the others also went down to the battlefield and began to follow Zhang Yi's orders, bypassing the oversized mechanical life forms and focusing on picking off the mass-produced machines. Who? A beautiful arc appeared in the sky, causing many people to turn their heads. When they saw what it was, some of them exclaimed in surprise. Mecha! It's a mecha! Liu Karen was piloting a small snow owl mecha as it soared across the battlefield. Why didn't she use the big one? For one thing, it wasn't necessary, and for another, Zhang Yi would feel the pain. Not only does it consume a lot of energy each time it is deployed, but repairing battle damage is also a huge drain on resources. So Zhang Yi's attitude is very clear: the giant snow owl will not be deployed unless absolutely necessary. The appearance of the mecha became a bright spot on the battlefield, but after a few moments of looking, everyone's attention returned to the enemy in front of them. The mecha are very complicated to build and not very cost-effective, as it is difficult to systematically train mecha pilots. They are much more difficult to control than fighter jets. So even when they saw this thing appear, at first people didn't care. Countries around the world have been researching mecha for more than a day or two. Why hasn't it appeared on the battlefield to this day? Because it is impractical. The same amount of resources could build many fighter jets or tanks. However, soon, the performance of the snow owl on the battlefield shocked the high-ranking officials of Fremons. Its super high mobility and flexibility of movement were completely unmatched by any modern fighter or tank. It was originally thought that this small mech was built purely out of the personal hobby of its creator, but Liu Karen, piloting the Snow Owl, slaughtered the life forms of the Mechanical Legion on the battlefield like a god of killing. Its graceful flight was truly like that of a snow owl, swift and fierce, and the large amount of ammunition it carried was like fireworks blooming on the battlefield. The high-energy explosive material Yuan that Liu Karen had developed on her own eliminated the hassle of carrying it, and a small missile of the same volume was hundreds of times more powerful than the gunpowder missiles of the previous era. It is even more agile than a fighter jet in the air, can even hover in the air, and can land on the ground, draw its sword and engage in close combat. Gradually, when people discovered the White Eagle on the battlefield, they realized that its effect was no less than that of the Black Chariot-level Epsilon mutant. The way they looked at it changed. This is simply a killing machine designed for use on the battlefield. Is this the Huashu Kingdom's secret weapon? Many people murmured. Could it be that they have obtained the science and technology of mechanical civilization? Some people also had this conjecture, and their gaze at those oversized mechanical life forms became even more fervent. They didn't know that this was a super-era mecha built entirely through Liu Karen's own abilities. Geniuses like her were extremely rare in this world. And it was even more of a rare event for a genius to be able to find a capable mentor to cultivate them. Therefore, there are not many Yang Xingxins or Liu Kurens in this world. There are more corpses buried in the ice and snow. Liu Karen was lucky to meet Jangi, who gave her unlimited resources and even allowed her to break through the restrictions of her life level, growing into an Epsilon-class mutant. At this time, she was in a state of complete human-machine integration, and her ability, transformation from nothing, allowed her to control the mecha as freely as she controlled her own body. Seeing Liu Karen working so hard to kill the enemy, Liang Yu took a deep breath, clenched her hands around her long sword, and muttered, "I should work hard too. Otherwise, I might be surpassed by a mechanical engineer in the battlefield." The two swords she was holding were brand new weapons that Liu Karen had created for her, Dragon's Roar and Phoenix Dance.